So apparently the UFC has made too much money at this stage of the game, and they want to find ways to sabotage their own business. Dana White wants to take away the media from the ranking system, and he wants to find different ways to rank the fighters. I don't understand this. It's worked fine up until now, in my opinion. Dana White usually makes fights regardless of rankings anyway, so I don't understand why there's such a huge problem. Ranked 8 just got the title shot, so I don't see why he cares so much. It was to do with the Khalil Roundtree fight. He thinks he should have been ranked higher. I think he should be ranked higher above like maybe Volkan Oezdemir, but outside of that, maybe number 7. Other than that, I'm not too keen on Khalil moving too much higher, because for all we know, this was just like a stylistic matchup advantage that he had, considering he specifically trained for Alex Pereira's style, and it was going to be predominantly in striking exchange. But yeah, and then Ariel Helwani chimes in, and he hates the UFC, so obviously he wants it sabotaged, as he always does. But yeah, let's get straight into it. He's talking about Khalil Roundtree right now after losing to Pereira.
Like that ahead of him that have won. If you look at who Pereira has beat, right, and how he's beat him leading up to this fight, he was winning on the scorecards when he got stopped. He was ahead on the scorecards.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the only thing of importance he says at this part of the clip. But yeah, he was ahead. But you gotta remember this, right? Sometimes fighters fight specifically to game plan against other people. So Alex Pereira in this case could have just wanted to wear down Khalil Roundtree because he knew his cardio would wane. He's a big muscly dude. It's an easy assumption to make. Also the fact that he's never ever had a 5-round fight in his entire life, but he still got a title shot as ranked number 8. He's coming off a win over washed up Anthony Smith. Even Johnny Walker could do that. But yeah, that justified a title shot. Didn't really care where he was ranked then, but now all of a sudden, let's change everything. Let's be honest here, this is because John Jones is in pound for pound number 1, and he just needs some way to justify that John Jones is number 1 pound for some weird reason. Even though it makes no difference to his life and he's going to be a billionaire no matter what. That fight will still sell. Who cares what he's ranked pound for pound? People will come to see John Jones despite what his ranking says. Anyway, we'll move on to 553, where he outwardly says so himself that the media is now been banished from ranking.
Because I'm going to change it. The media will no longer control the rankings in the UFC.
Simple statement. He doesn't want the media to control the rankings anymore just because he disagrees with them. Weird. It's weird because you want as many people to have input on the ranking as possible. Not to the fans, obviously. I don't think the solution to any of this is to go to the fans. I think the fans are the most biased people in the world. The majority of them, 90 to 95% of them are casuals. And they'll want Dustin Poirier ranked above Arman Tsarukyan, even though they've never fought. And Arman Tsarukyan just beat Charles Oliveira. They wouldn't care. They'll just want Dustin Poirier ahead of Arman. So let's keep the fans out of this. But let's keep some media members in this, in my opinion. That's just my opinion, though. Let's move on to another part. This was an interesting bit of thing that he said here.
This, that, which people do a lot. People will judge a fight before it happens, which you can never do. It's been proven a zillion times over. But here's the thing. When the fight is over, now we know where he really sits in the rankings.
Talking about Khalil against Alex Pereira, apparently now we know where he sits in the rankings. I don't think we do, to be honest. Sometimes you can just fight someone that's a tougher stylistic matchup for you than someone else's. You know what I mean? Like, I can't think of like a good example off the top of my head right now. Well, okay, how about this one? Ankalaev versus Paul Craig. Ankalaev is significantly better than Paul Craig, but he got caught in a triangle, and that was like an issue for him. That doesn't mean now we know where he stands in the rankings. We've got to see like a longer body of work. We've got to see what he does against different opponents, like different variety. Variety's the spice of life, you know what I mean? Like, we don't know. Khalil Roundtree just lost to Alex Pereira. Dana White could move him to number 3, number 4, number 5 in the rankings, top 5. And then he gets smoked by someone else again. What does that mean? Like, what does that prove, really? Until he himself defeats someone that's higher above him in the rankings, I don't think we actually know where Khalil Roundtree stands. To be honest with you. Because if you think about it, right? Bruno Silva put up more of a fight against Alex Pereira than Sean Strickland did. Does that mean now we know where Bruno Silva stands in the middleweight division's ranking? I don't know. Obviously not. Bruno Silva's clearly a worse fighter than Sean Strickland. And he just had a stylistic advantage over Alex. Or not even an advantage. He lost the fight. The striking fight. But the way he struck was just better for fighting Alex Pereira than the way Sean Strickland approached that fight. That doesn't mean anything. Shut up, Dana. All right, let's keep listening.
I mean, I just said this a week or two ago about Max Holloway and where he sits in the rankings. And I could literally go through the rank.
That's a different case, though. Max Holloway actually beat Justin Gaethje and then was ranked low in the rankings. He didn't lose to Justin Gaethje, and now we knew where he stood in the rankings, and therefore he's top 5. You know what I mean? Not consistent enough, Dana. And it's surprising to me that of all the things throughout the history of the UFC, this is what's made him go, nah, this thing that's making us millions of dollars and so far hasn't seemed to show many cracks. Let's change it. You know what I mean? Just weird. And then I don't want a rehauling of the rankings either, by the way. I don't agree with the UFC rankings. I think they're shambolic at times, because sometimes people will leave someone off the rankings and other person will have him really high in the rankings, and then we end up with Max Holloway number 10 in the lightweight division. There's a lot of stuff I disagree. Like, why is Uzdemir? Let's go back to him, right? Why is he ranked number 6? He lost to Nikita Krylov. You know what I mean? He beat Johnny Walker, but at this stage of the game, like, I'm sure Khalil could probably KO him as well. You know, what's Volkan done, really, to be ranked above Nikita Krylov? Even Khalil, like, if he's above Khalil, I'm fine with it. Khalil was coming off a win against Anthony Smith, who was washed beyond belief at this point, but, you know what I mean? It's just weird. It's just weird how this is causing such a big stir in Dana White's head that he has to go on his Twitter account and post that he's going to make changes. It's about John Jones, and you know it, and I know it. Anyway. Oh, God. The next point at 9:55.
But where would you put Khalil, I guess is the question.
Let's do this.
Look at him. He's just so aggravated. Let's do this. Like, he's just gonna need to get a grip of everyone. Like, they're not understanding what he's saying. Let's do this.
The media says he's the number 2 pound-for-pound guy in the world. Pereira. Khalil was winning on the scorecards when he lost the fight. What?
What? You know what I mean? Dana White is just confused how no one is picking up what he's putting down. Like, this fight just brings to light the problems with the ranking that it's had for years and years, and now Dana's like, what? You don't agree with me? You know what I mean? Like, it's not that big a deal, Dana. He was ranked 8 before. You made the fight anyway. He's ranked 8 now. Match him up with someone. Here's what he should do. Match him up with someone in the top 5. Give him Jamal Hill, who's ranked number 3 in the division. And then you match them up. And that makes sense in my opinion. Instead of just forcing him up in the rankings without winning a fight, just give him a fight in the top 5 anyway and see if he is top 5. What difference does he make if he fights Jamal Hill ranked number 5 versus ranked number 8? You know what I mean? He's still fighting Jamal Hill. If he wins, he'll move up. If he loses, he stays at 8. Simple. Why? Why complicate it?
What does that fucking tell you? Where should Khalil be? He fought the number 2 pound-for-pound, who was judged number 2 pound-for-pound by the media.
Has to make sure.
And was beating him on the scorecards when the fight finished. And it was an absolute fucking war.
Again,
the Dana White sound bites are going crazy. Some of this stuff will be memed, obviously. Let's move on, though. 10:50. Again, I don't understand how no one can just tell Dana, like, sit him down and explain to him, dude, we can just match him up with Jamal Hill next. We'll find out within 6 months' time if he's top 5 or not. You know what I mean? Like, why come off a loss, look good, but then get moved up? I'm sure a lot of people can look good on not short notice, but against specific matchups, I'm sure they can lose in close fights. You know what I mean? Like, a close fight you can lose. Diego Lopez had a close fight that he could have arguably honestly won if you rewatch it against Nasir Nimavov. I didn't hear Dana White saying that this shows us where Diego Lopez is. Let's put him in the top 10. No, he had to go up in the rankings. He had to fight multiple dudes, and then finally, when he was just outside the top 10, he wasn't even top 10. Outside of the top 10, they gave him someone like Brian Ortega to see if he was top 5. And then he was. And that was perfect. And he's better off for it, because now he's a bigger star than he would have been if he was just put in the top 10 for no reason. Anyway.
Absolutely fucking ridiculous. And I can't take it anymore. It needs to be fixed. AI isn't coming along fast enough.
Why has Dana White got this such a massive hatred? Like, I know it, the media has been arguing with him about John Jones pound for pound and all that. But why? Why? I don't get it. Like, surely there have been worse decisions in the history of the UFC. For you to now come up with this idea that these people are going to meet with them tomorrow and then they'll show you a new way of getting fighters ranked. You know what I mean? Said that a lot this video, but you're understanding, right? You're understanding what I'm trying to say here. Dana White has gone crazy, and I don't know if it's John Jones or what, but it probably is, to be honest. I would love to see an AI come out, and then the AI in its, like, Siri voice tell Dana White that John Jones isn't pound for pound number one, and that's not what pound for pound means. And just because you think pound for pound means one thing, doesn't mean that's what it actually means. So shut up, Dana. Alright then, moving on. And my friend, and that was Siri. Let's go to here. 11:55.
You know, there are a lot of things that we can't control because there should never be a scenario where we are personally controlling the rankings. Can't happen. You have to have another system in there where for instance, if I think, you know, at the end of the day, I make fights that people want to see anyway.
At the end of the day, so Dana understands that at the end of the day, he makes fights we want to see anyway. So why not make Khalil Roundtree versus Jamal Hill? Who cares about the rankings? Everyone wants to see it. There's hype now. Jamal Hill was having his antics at cage side. And now, that's a big fight. Doesn't matter what he's ranked. He had a huge performance. He's got a lot of fans, a lot of popularity. Everyone thinks he's a badass. Everyone that didn't know Khalil Roundtree now thinks, holy shit, he did that to Pereira. But Yuri and Jamal Hill, former champions, neither of them could last more than 2 rounds. More than 3 rounds combined. You know what I mean? So now that's a big fight anyway. So you just make the fight. And also, one more thing, W Dana here. I'm glad he's not taking the control of the rankings himself, because he shouldn't. That's got to be some sort of conflict of interest, right? Like, if it was up to Dana, Conor McGregor would never leave the rankings, ever, no matter how long he sat out. Neither would John Jones, from this point on. Obviously, there was some feud between him and him back in the day, but, yeah, W Dana, like, understanding that he can't just take over the rankings himself, and hopefully whatever this new method is, it doesn't involve fan voting, because that would be the shittest thing ever, because I'm telling you, these fans have no clue what the fuck they're watching, most of the time, honestly. Usually it's just like, this guy's on an 8-fight win streak, but has he beaten Dustin Poirier, you know what I mean? Ankalaev who? How can he be a threat to him when Yuri Prohaska was a former champion, and that's the way they think, like, the belt means everything to them. Even though realistically it's just a lot of stylistic thinking. Some people get fast-tracked and get to the title while they're in their prime, while other people have to go do 10 to 12 fight win streaks. Let's continue on.
But I believe that I should not be the one controlling the rankings. So we're going to figure out a different system, because it can't be the people who have been doing it, because they're not doing it right.
Again, the same thing that he goes over. He's not going to do it, and he doesn't want the people that have been doing it to do it. Now, we're just going to do one last bit in this video before we move on to Ariel Helwani and his delusion, and he just wants to kill the UFC, let's be honest here. Like, I don't know why he has such edgy takes on MMA. Like, he wants to change everything. He wants open scoring. He wants the things that he's suggesting right now, that he's about to suggest in a little bit. But let's move on to this bit. And this is where this idiot in the crowd just chimes in, just sucking Dana White's balls. And even Dana White's like, hold on, buddy. You know what I mean? He's like, hold on. You're getting a bit too deep in there.
Probably you, Sean, and Hunter, and Meek are the ones who know more about how the fights are done, if someone refuses to fight, if someone gets injured. And I know you mentioned that you don't want to be part of the rankings, but is someone that could know more than you about some of these fights? Because probably us from the media, we don't learn about a lot of what happens. Like,
this guy is like the biggest, you know, like, have you seen those things where it's like some, what's that animated thing called? That black dude, he's like, no, I'm what, like when he's like sad that he's not white. You know, that one, I'm forgetting his name, I've seen it. But this reporter here has just got like the biggest case of capture syndrome. I don't know, that thing where you like fall in love with your capture, because all of a sudden he's shitting on the media himself. It's like, obviously we don't know anything. You know everything here, Dana. Like, you know, you, Hunter, all these people. Like, you guys have a good grasp on this stuff, so why aren't you guys ranking it? Is basically what he's about to say. Let's finish on with what he's going to say. I just have to chime in every now and then so I'm not getting copyrighted, despite only having 44 subscribers.
Backstage on all of these negotiations about these fights to make, it would make sense, like, you have part on the rankings. I mean, from my...
That we have a fighter do what? Be involved in the
rankings. And I know you said that you don't want to do it.
No, we can't do it.
Yeah, and this guy just wants Dana White to control the rankings, have no power over the rankings, have no honest role in MMA other than asking stupid, dumb questions in the media. You know, just chime in here and there. So what do you think of this guy's debut? And Dana White hasn't even seen it because it was on the early prelims. And obviously Dana White didn't show up at the early prelims to watch some fight in the Apex, you know what I mean? That's his entire job, and he wants to give away more power to Dana White to control the rankings. Thankfully, Dana White himself is self-aware enough to know that he's a flawed human being, that he can't be perfect in the way that he encapsulates fighters, and he has favorites and biases, obviously, like Conor McGregor would get the best matchups. He gets them anyway without being ranked, but the fighters that he thinks can make the most money would just get the best matchups all the time, even more than they do now, and then he can just lie about the rankings. But let's continue on. Dana White has some sensible logic here.
I don't think that it's right that we would do the rankings, no matter how unbiased you try to be. It's impossible. And I'll be honest with you, there are some fighters I don't like. There's fighters that I really like, and there's things that are good for the business. There's things that you might think I don't want in our hands at all.
That's probably it for the Dana White portion of the video, but I like what he's saying. It's basically what I said earlier again. Dana White doesn't want to have to pick favorites, put his bias aside, his relationship with some of these fighters. So, like, these fighters might sometimes, you know, like, they're good business partners with Dana White. They do Dana White right. They step in on short notice, and they just come out and say, Dana, what the hell? Why am I ranked only 14 instead of 3? You know what I mean? Like, where am I on the pound-for-pound ranking? And all of a sudden, Dana White has to explain to them why he thought a certain way. He doesn't want that pressure, and I understand that. And he shouldn't have that pressure, or not the pressure, like that power, honestly, over the sport. Like, at some point, you have to separate the owner of the company from the sport of the company, you know what I mean? Like, he wants to make as much money as possible. He'll obviously favor the fighters that make him that money. You know what I mean? Like, he's not going to... The sporting part of the sport is still, like, a huge thing that captivates a lot of fans. Let's not just throw it away because this reporter is an idiot and can't think for himself and doesn't want to have any thought that is original. Just wants Dana to tell him how things go. Anyway, back to Ariel. And now Ariel Helwani, this really fucking annoyed me. He wants the rankings gone for some reason. Let's get right into it.
Years ago, I would say to Dana White, thank you. Please get rid of them. Please do away with them. Once and for all, end the charade. End the charade that these are real. End the charade that you guys even listen to them. And
first of all, they are real rankings. These fighters want to fight people ahead of them. Let's not just throw away, like, the ashes of Gregory... What was his name again? Gregor Gillespie. Let's not just throw away his ashes without even cremating him first. I don't know. He literally only wanted to fight people above him in the rankings. And then when he didn't get that, he literally quit the sport for some weird reason. Didn't want to make any more money. Just went fishing. You know what I mean? That was Gregor Gillespie's career done. So obviously the rankings do matter. And you got to think about it like this, right? These rankings add a lot to the hypes of fights. Diego Lopez versus Brian Ortega was a bigger fight because it was number 3 on the planet versus number like 12 or 13. You know what I mean? It was a lower ranked dude fighting a higher ranked dude, and it was like a huge thing. Without these rankings, also, you got to keep in mind, the casual fans have no clue who's good and who's bad at fighting. They only tune in for the pay-per-view main cards. They only watch the pay-per-views with the stars that they like: Sean O'Malley, Israel Adesanya, Islam Makhachev, Dustin Poirier, Max Holloway. Now, not before. After the Gaethje fight, now they'll be tuning into Max Holloway, Khamzat Chimaev, and Alex Pereira and John Jones. So these are the 8 or 9 fighters that they're like really invested in, and when they fight, they'll tune in. But other than that, they don't care. They don't care about the Apex main event. They don't care that we're complaining that for some weird reason Neil Magny has found himself in another Apex main event. They don't care about that. So they need to know something visually that tells them that this guy is this good at fighting, this guy is this good at fighting, and this guy is this good at fighting. You idiot. Why would you want to make the sport less accessible to the general populace at its most popular point in its history? More people watching UFC now than they ever have before. And you just want to take away the thing that like gets them into the sport, like makes it easier for them to get into the sport. Ridiculous in my opinion, and Ariel Helwani is obviously trying to sabotage the UFC. He has no power over the UFC, so he's not actively sabotaging it, but his takes are just so crazy. Like, they just outwardly do anything it takes to make the sport worse. Remember the open scoring shit? You know what I mean? Like, that was open scoring. Maybe the fighters can say all they want, that they're going to fight as hard as they possibly can. That's not true. When we as fans don't know who's winning a round, it makes the sport more exciting for us as well. Like Brandon Royval versus Tatsuro Taira. Going to the 5th round, it was a 2-2 scorecard. But hypothetically, if it was 3-1 one way, then we'd know and we'd be like, okay, so this round doesn't matter. Royval just survived. And if Royval knows that, he'll just try to survive.
In the charade that there's actual people from credible outlets that cover MMA on a daily basis, because that's what it should be. It shouldn't be the guy who likes MMA, who works at the...
I agree with this take. I'm not sure who's making the rankings, but I'm sure it's not just some dude who likes MMA, like Skip Bayless or something, you know, like he watches MMA when Conor McGregor fights. I'm sure there's more to it than just that. Moving along to 4 minutes and 50 seconds.
Say, and make your own. Make your own. I would actually be more interested in who the UFC thinks is in the top 5 in the light heavyweight division. And I would be more interested to, on Tuesday morning, wake up and be like, oh, okay, they have now Khalil.
No, you wouldn't, Ariel Helwani. And also, even if you did, it doesn't matter. Because this is a sport. It doesn't matter what you're interested in seeing. In basketball, when they have the seedings for basketball teams, it doesn't matter if it's more interesting to you. If, like, you think a team's better and they should be higher placed. You know what I mean? There needs to be a general consensus of different people that is not the UFC themselves to make these rankings. And these rankings are important, by the way. Let's not act like they're not. Like, every now and then we'll see number 10 versus number 3. But that usually makes sense. Every now and then we'll get Sean O'Malley fighting Petr Yan. But more often than not, you look at up and down any single card, and it's like 2 guys closely ranked fighting each other. This guy's coming off a loss, this guy's coming on a win. They fight each other. 2 guys coming off losses. Both of them lost to the champion. They're fighting each other. 2 guys coming off wins. But they're potentially maybe like not the biggest stars. So it doesn't matter if they burn one of the other ones out. Fighting each other. Just because it doesn't happen every single time and Khalil Roundtree got a title shot. To be fair, they needed a main event for an event. And they just didn't want to put Pennington in a main event. Which I completely understand. And they just looked down the rankings, saw Nikita Krylov won't sell anything, and he's been away for a long time. So it's not even like his name's relevant at all. Rakic coming off loss, Yuri lost to him twice, Jamal Hill lost to him, Blachowicz has lost to him, Ankalaev should have fought him, let's be honest here, but I actually don't know why Ankalaev didn't fight him. Maybe he's stuck in the East or something. You know, I don't know, Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, somewhere in there. But yeah, Ariel Helwani just going out of his way to try to make MMA as bad as it possibly is. Anyway, 5-18. And it really does irk me because I feel like Ariel Helwani is just coming out with edgy thoughts, and like the people in the comment section will all be like agreeing with Ariel Helwani here, but they shouldn't, obviously. Like, Ariel Helwani is just back, and he's back on his little bandwagon of trying to push different agendas, like open scoring. Like, it's just weird to me, like, you wouldn't want to have rankings.
Sausages made. You make the rankings. I want to know what Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard think. That is more interesting to me than this fakakta make-believe ranking system that you guys have in place that you don't even pay attention to begin with. So
let's be honest, Ariel Helwani. The moment they start making their own rankings, you will come on your own show and start beef with. You'll start beef with the UFC over the fact that like someone that comes onto your show is ranked lower than someone else who doesn't come on your show, but is probably a bigger star. You know what I mean? When what is obviously going to happen happens, you will make complaints. You'll say this, fix that. Why? Just keep it the way it is. It's fine. I don't see the UFC losing money because of the ranking system. I don't see fans in droves being hoarded out of the arenas because apparently the rankings don't make sense. You know what I mean? And also one more thing, other than the rankings, why aren't we fixing the judging? Like, Dana White is so adamant about fixing all these things, but for some reason the judging, which is completely shit by the way, why aren't we adding 2 more judges to the panel? Like, instead of 3 judges, have 5 judges. So there's like less margin of error when 2 judges just don't see the fight the way that they should be seen. The fact that everyone saw John Jones losing but 3 judges had it the other way. Surely have some people that watch the sport and know what they're doing, you know what I mean? And maybe have some of the judges watching from ringside and some watching on like their on their TV or something to get like the entire perspective, so like we know what the average consensus of these judges is. Anyway, moving along. Let's go to the 8-minute mark. God.
Be more interesting if we looked up and said like, oh wow, they got Ian Gary at number 4 now. Great.
I don't know if I love that, just because, like, if I'm a fighter, right, now I know that the UFC is deciding that, right? If I'm Renato Moicano, I don't want them to go, oh, I actually think you're number 4 versus number 3. That could create some dicey situations. I like Renato's suggestion. 2 points. Just
No, don't do points. And first of all, you wouldn't do that though. If Ian Gary chooses not to come onto your show, you'll just say, oh, Ian Gary this, that, the other. Why is Leon sliding? You know what I mean? Right now, you can't directly criticize Dana White, and that's why probably you want that to change immediately. Right now, it's people in the media, like yourself, Ariel Helwani, that are making up these rankings right now. Their votes, they're voting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's also a big populace of people. Like, it's not like a... You know, it's not like a electoral vote or anything, but a lot of people's minds come in. I think what we need to do with these rankings, if you want to fix them, is if someone wins in a division, that person should be eligible to be ranked in that division. You can't have it this way where Max Holloway fights at lightweight, but then some people are like, oh, well, no, he's a featherweight, so I'll have my own criteria for ranking fighters, while this other guy has his own criteria. They need to be explained. There's one criteria for ranking fighters. This is the criteria. If they fight in a division, they're eligible to be ranked in the division. And then you rank him based on that. Because right now, Roman Dolidze should be a top 10 light heavyweight on the planet, in my opinion. But who cares about Roman Dolidze? Also, points. The point system. How would that work? I'm curious. There'd be 8... Let's say a fighter goes on an 8-fight win streak and he fights absolute bums. Like, his best win of that entire run is Vito Petrino. That's his best win of that 8-fight win streak. And but they're all finishes, so it's impressive, obviously. But... how would you measure that against someone who's potentially only won 3 fights? But those 3 fights are Jan Blachowicz, Yuri Prohaska, and Jamal Hill. How do you measure that? With points. Because the tougher the opponents are, the less likely of a finish or what all this stuff you ought to get. So how will you score that for that fighter? I disagree with points. I'm just saying, like, just keep it the way it is. Dana White already doesn't control the rankings. Let's not give him control of the rankings, Ariel Helwani. You've been anti-Dana White, take this power away from him, take that away, give fighters more rights, give fighters more power, but all of a sudden you want to give him this huge thing over fighters' careers where it's like, he picks where they're ranked in the division? It's clear you just want to do this so like your show becomes more interesting. On Tuesday night you show up and you're like complaining to the fighters, you should be this, you should be that, what's Dana White thinking? Just stupid stuff, and it's clearly see-throughable as well. I will say this though, for anyone that thinks I hate Ariel Helwani, I don't. I think he has the best interviews of anyone in MMA. Like, if Ariel Helwani has an interview with a fighter and someone else has an interview with a fighter, I'm clicking on Ariel Helwani's 9 out of 10 times. And maybe 10 out of 10 times, depending on who that other person is. You know what I mean? Like, come on. 11:37. We're almost done here. For some reason, I'm just incapable of making under 20-minute videos.
And they're just...
You don't think it would be
flawed.
interesting if the UFC came out with their own rankings?
I do. I think that'd be interesting because then they're showing their cards, right? They're saying, this is what we think.
Yeah.
But I don't think that would be good.
Again, just clear. You can just see through it. Like, he just wants more reasons to hate on the UFC and Dana White. Like, oh, this is why you had this guy? This high? I'm sorry. I'm just copying the MMA guru now. His impressions thing. But no. Like I said... You can tell by his voice, though. You can clearly tell by his voice. Like, yeah, I want to know what they're thinking. Like, at all times. Like, dude, just leave it to the media. Like, I don't see the problem. Like, if you disagree with the rankings, just look at Sherdog's rankings. Look at some other fight matrix. There's other rankings that exist that have a different criteria, the more fair criteria, with one opinion. Just listen to that. Just look at that and just make a determination of who's the best fighters. Don't need to change the rankings just because Khalil Roundtree lost to Alex Pereira and didn't fucking shoot up into the top 5. This is the last bit of the clip I'm using. Ariel Helwani wants to do all these changes, change the way the sport goes, change the way the UFC functions, and all that stuff. But apparently other methods of solving this exact same issue is just too complicated.
Come up with the system.
I hate points. I hate points when people suggest them for scoring. It's just too complicated. It reminds me of like Olympic boxing.
It's the opposite. It's the easiest possible solution. Factoring humans into the equation to go,
But then
I
I
like
can't
this
complain.
win.
Or
more
okay,
than this
or how
win,
about this? How
is
about
the
this?
the complication you don't need.
Well,
This is the
how about this? How
simplest-
about this? How about this? Just get rid of them. No ranking.
Shut up, Ariel Helwani. That's the last bit of thing I wanted to put up. First of all, apparently points is too complicated. I agree this is too complicated. I'm with Ariel Helwani on this one. But it can't just be UFC controls the rankings or get rid of them. Like you can't be this much against rankings, Ariel Helwani. Like I've never ever heard him be this against UFC rankings. I think I have before once, like just mentioned that he doesn't like the way that it's done. But in general though, what is this hatred towards UFC rankings all of a sudden? Like Dana White has to have the power in, or just get rid of him? Again, I said before, the casual fan won't understand what the hell's going on in the sport. The main card of a pay-per-view looks sexier when there's numbers next to people's name. Like people that are casual, they tune in, they're like, okay, there's these numbers, so these guys are the best in their division. Yeah, it's like, yeah, they are actually. Even if they're not, even if they're like on the slide, you can clearly tell like Tony Ferguson was ranked 7 when he fought Michael Chandler, but he wasn't a top 10 fighter. I didn't think so he was. I thought he should have been out of the top 10 already. But the number, people were like, okay, so it's number 5 versus number 7, so it's like the elite of the elite fighting, you know what I mean? And then now he wants to get rid of the rankings, which would honestly getting rid of the rankings is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. At that point, what are you fighting for? It's like 1 fight win streak, title shot, 2 fight win streak, title shot. You know what I mean? Like you need to have rankings to show people progression and like level up of competition and all that. I know the rankings only came in 2013 and everything was fine before that, but it's a different time now. The sport's more popular now. Even though back then Brock Lesnar was selling a lot of pay-per-views, but now we're in an era where more and more people will watch the UFC every single year. People will fall out and they'll come back in and they'll just want to watch UFC, and then it's just easier now to watch so I don't get why they're trying to change it. Anyway, that was my thought. Like, share, subscribe. On 44 subscribers now. Let's get me to 45. Let's get a subscribe out of this video, which I think I will probably. But if anyone's managed to make it to 33 minutes of Dana White and Ariel Helwani, just both of them just trying to ruin the sport. Dana White especially. No, sorry, Ariel Helwani especially. Dana White, surprisingly, considering that this model has led to the most success he's ever had in his entire career, without Conor McGregor, by the way. Weirdness. Anyway, again, don't change the rankings. Just let more capable people vote on the rankings. You know what I mean? Just give the people that ask the questions in the media, let them vote on the rankings. Or just take an average of Sherdog, Fight Matrix, any big publication that has their own ranking system, take that ranking, and then just average it out to have your own ultimate ranking. A plethora of different rankings making up your superior ranking, and I suppose in some ways. Anyway, that's all. Like, share, subscribe. Let's get me to 45 subscribers. I'll see you soon.